Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Zen from Zen World, and I hope you're having a great day. So I'm really late on this. This is gonna be a review for the Death Note one shot. Many people have read it. There's a ton of different videos out there. So if you're watching my video, thanks for being here. This is gonna be a quick rundown review where we're not gonna really get into the specifics, but there are gonna be spoilers to say the least, right? So number one, the writing and the art are amazing. It's gonna be a 10 out of 10 for me. It's great to see the return of Death Note. A lot of people have some gripes about how the main character looks, Minoru. I think he looks great. He's not I don't know. He's not a silver haired or a yellow haired type person. He just looks pretty chill, and he's one of the smartest people in Japan, right? As we see him in the beginning of the chapter itself, he is he's pretty young. He comes across Ryuk, who's bringing the Death Note because essentially Ryuk just wants more apples, right? He wants to have more fun in the real world so that he could gather more apples, and that's one of his things, right? I would equate kind of like apples to like alcohol or something like that, where it's kind of addictive for Ryuk itself, right? So again, this takes place after the events of the previous Death Note continuity, where Light and a lot of those characters have long gone past, but some of the characters are still present. They're older though, essentially, and Ryuk basically says, "Here's the Death Note. Here are the rules, things of that nature." Right? He gets to be familiar with all those kind of like those written dialogues that we've seen for Death Note in the past. He basically gets a knowledge of it, and he's able to see Ryuk where initially he is scared. Right? The way that Ryuk comes from the ground, you kind of get that like silhouette of like this is a nightmare creature itself, and but after the introductions, they get to know each other, and then Minoru basically is thinking, and he's coming up with a plan of how he could use the Death Note, right? But he's like, I'm not a killer. I'm not gonna write someone's name in the book and then um, basically like take someone out. I'm not really like Kira. So then, you're kind of thinking as you're reading, so what is he going to do then? So he basically says, come back in 2 years, right? He has a plan, but he doesn't know if it's going to work in the current time where he's in. So he needs 2 years to kind of like think it through and not think it through. He needs 2 years for Ryuk to come back because once he relinquishes ownership of the Death Note, that means that the memories go away too, right? So he comes up with the plan and then tells Ryuk, come back in 2 years and I'll have all the apples that you want. And Ryuko's like, 2 years? It's like, all right, basically. So then we did get a time skip, and he comes back in 2 years. So that's when we see, that's when we see Ryu come from the ground and look all scary, and then Minoru's like, what the? And then he touches him, not touches him, but he makes the Death Note touch him, right? And then he remembers all the memories from before. And then Minoru's kind of chill again, and then he's like, "Oh, it's been a long time, basically." And just skipping along, Minoru's basically like, "Yeah, I think the plan is gonna work, right?" Because he still remembers. He said, "Yeah, the plan is gonna work, how it is right now." Um, he may do some tinkering and things like that. But essentially, the whole plot of this manga is pretty genius in the sense that he wants to sell the Death Note. He wants to sell the Death Note. So you're probably like, what? How's he gonna do this, right? Because with technology before, he kind of he dictates and he says all the stuff that Kara did in the past won't work in our current day, right? With technology, there's cameras everywhere, the internet. There's no way that someone's gonna get right names from their local area and I don't know get away with all these murders essentially. But his main plan is to sell the Death Note, and it's to sell the Death Note to the biggest bidder because essentially he just wants to get rich. One of the things that I want you to keep in mind is that earlier in the manga, it was stated that Japan was going through some kind of I would say lack of funds and bankruptcies, and not bankruptcies, but they were in debt, right? So I just want you to hold on to that because a lot of people that I watched on videos and read didn't really bring this up, but I think it kind of lends itself to a bigger plot for Minoru, right? Whether it was intentional or not intentional. Now, he basically asked Ryuk to go on Sakura TV, and we know Sakura TV from the previous Death Note. He asks. Ryuk to bring the Death Note with a letter. And the first time he goes in Sakura TV, basically says like selling the Death Note. This is the real Death Note, owned by Kara. Not for those words, but basically so that everyone can know. At first, everyone took it as a joke, right? And then little by little, people started to be like, the power of Kara, because nothing on Sakura TV is showing a person who's holding it. It's just an invisible book that's floating. And the reason why this is genius is because remember, Minoru can't go on TV and hold up a death note without being arrested eventually. So what happens is he asks Ryuk to do it. And then when Ryuk is done, he'll kind of sink back into the ground and then go under all the way so that no one can really track him, right? Because there are people who have seen Ryuk and maybe they could see where he's going. So he goes underground and all the way. It's pretty genius. And then he comes back on TV again and he does the same thing until the bidding starts to get like really real, and it starts to go on a national scale where then countries are starting to bid on it, including the United States of America. And they're bidding like a ridiculous amount of money, right? So eventually, you're probably wondering, like, okay, but how are they going to give it to Minoru without him getting caught? So then he comes up with this plan. Like, he wants to get rich, but, he could be okay with not getting all of the money. So he decides that he wants basically whoever wins the bid, right, of this auction for the Death Note, by this certain amount of time, they have to submit all of their money to people in Japan who have a bank of X, Y, and Z. I forgot the bank's name, right? So essentially, and it has to be of this age. I think it's like 13 and I forgot the age. It's like 16 and down, right? Basically, it's relevant to his age, but also at the same time, it gives him a window where they can't track who the person is. It's written really well. So then, basically, the United States of America is the one who wins, and we see the drawing of President Trump, right? And the submission of the money goes in, but then we get a scene that this is the part that I probably have a distill, I have a distaste for, right? Essentially. Now, when we go back into the other world, I guess, right? Um, the king of the death gods is really angry, right? And he's angry and frustrated because he doesn't like the way that the death note is being used, right? Essentially, he doesn't like the way that Minoru is using it. So he adds on a new note, a new rule, basically. And the new rule states that um, the seller of the death note and the buyer of the death note will basically die and perish, right? So a couple things happen. All of the money gets submitted to all of those kids in Japan, essentially, right? And Minoru basically gets his way, but then he perishes at the end of the book. I did not like this part, and the reason why is because it didn't seem everything was going perfectly, written perfectly, um, beautiful artwork, but then to see that he's a character who then passes away because of a extra rule that was just placed right at the end, it just seemed like, man, that was like a cheat, right? And the reason why I'm saying it's a cheat because his plan was just immaculately written, right? I didn't I didn't think I was gonna enjoy it when he first said I'm gonna sell the Death Note, but the way that the plan was going was just really well done. I do hope from to time we get a one shot when it comes to Death Note. I think that on a political scale and where we are in current times, that the manga did really well of showing how a Death Note could be utilized in a day like today, right, where technology is rampant and things of that nature. So I'm eager to see what the future of Death Note holds. And I'm also eager to see if this gets animated. It would be really great to see kind of a one-shot animation of Death Note. So if I had to rate this, I would give it a 9 out of 10. It's essentially a 10 out of 10, except for that one part. But again, that's just a personal part. Some people really enjoyed the entirety, even with the death of Minoru. Um, and we did see, I'm just going to go back a little bit. We did see L, right? The new L, which used to be Nair. And he's older. He's a lot older, silver haired, kind of cool, and things of that nature. And he's, for the most of this part, for the most of the book itself, for the most of this one shot, he's just a spectator. And that's all it is, right? And he also dubs Minoru the Akira or Akira, right? I don't know if that's homage to Akira, right? From the early 1990s or late 80s. I think it's 1990s where we see Akira, right? Which is a really cool animation. I think it's the early 90s. Um, but it's just it's good. Go out and read it. It's like 80 88 pages, or it's in 80s range. Check it out, enjoy it, and the more people who read it, um, the better, right? If you I'm reading it from the Shonen Jump website, not website, the application. So it's there, and then you could get a chance to read a whole bunch of other cool manga that I'm doing reviews on, such as like Marshall, right? But with that being said, this is Zen from Zen World saying peace, love, and prosperity. Take care, everyone.